Hi, everyone. This is Carrie Kennedy, the director of the Institute of Beauty and Wellness and Aveda Institute Madison. Welcome to Beauty Care's live series, educational series. We are doing these videos for 21 days as part of a way to bring in education to our students at home. So today we have a great lineup. With our 2 o'clock guest being Lauren Moser. Lauren Moser's enthusiasm and abilities are responsible for her successful rise as one of the most well-recognized curly-haired specialists, I love curly hair, and freelance educators in the country. As an educator, salon owner, and North American Hairstylist Award texture winner, 2015, Lauren's reputation for brilliance is heard around the country. Her ability to adapt to all hair types has created a well-rounded stylist that she is today. Lauren looks at hair as a whole, meaning your attitude, your lifestyle, and effort really dictate your final look. I'm so excited for Lauren to share some of her expertise with us today. Please give a warm welcome to Lauren.
Hi, everyone. I'm really excited to be here. I wish it was under different circumstances, but of course, here we are. A little bit about me and what we're currently working on. Roderick and I, since we were last out in Wisconsin, have partnered with Taylor Andrews in Utah and opened Hair Lab Detroit Barber School, a Taylor Andrews Academy here in Michigan. So I know the distance learning hurdles very well as we are in the process of figuring those out on our, for our school. So I was honored to be asked to come and present to you guys. I know it's a very difficult time. So anything we can do to help, we are always happy to do it. So I know every school is trying something different to make it work, but I want you all to know how blessed you are to be able to continue your education. It's a lot of work on the back end and the back of the house. So kudos to your school staff for really stepping up and making this happen for all of you guys. It's a big deal. It feels heavy right now, but trust me, in the end, you'll be so grateful you had the opportunity to continue your education, as weird as it may be. But we are here and we are ready to learn, and I'm excited to share these tips with you. Before I get into cutting, I wanted to sit and talk with you guys a little bit about curly-haired clients and how they're different than our normal, typical straight-haired clients. I've been working with curly hair since the beginning of my career. My sister has curly hair, so I had the pleasure of learning to work on her. And when you're cutting your sister's hair, they tend to be very honest and tell you how terrible it is. So I got to learn, trial by fire, and which is how I came up with some of this curly hair cutting. So I want to talk to you about the type of client that will come in looking for curly haircuts and why they're different. In 2020, 2019, we started to see a return of natural curly hair. People weren't straightening their hair as much. And we had clients that were trying to embrace their natural texture, but also sort of let go of the old norms of control. So we're seeing a lot of fuller looks out there. We're seeing a lot of layers and volume, and even frizz is becoming sort of avant-garde chic out in the everyday world. So when dealing with curly clients, you have to approach them a little different than you do straight hair clients. We have to remember as people and as stylists and as service providers that these people are coming to us because they need help and they need us to help them understand their hair and the way that it works. So, and why it's different than other hair types. Most stylists haven't had the luxury of having sisters to be mean to them and tell them how terrible they are so they can learn to do curly hair. So they come in after having years and years and years of bad haircuts. I fully believe in hair PTSD, and I think that these clients all have some degree of it, just in all the terrible haircuts that they've endured, or encountering overconfident stylists that oh, I can do it. I'm great with curly hair, and then they do the haircut and it's the opposite of great. So they don't trust you automatically when it's their first visit. So it's our job to not only understand that, but help them work through it and not take offense to it. The easiest way that I find to break down barriers is the consultation. So many stylists fly through consultations, and you guys are all Aveda trained. You know how important consultations are. Consultations are where you break down walls, you see where their needs are, you see what their goals are. It allows you to create a service catered just to them, but also you can start processing and thinking about products that you want to recommend, or issues that you may want to address with your product recommendations. So the consultation is so, so, so important. And it's not a bunch of yes or no answers, it's a conversation. So the easiest way to start a conversation for me is to grab a stool or a chair next to them and actually sit and chat with them. So this is the part where you're not standing over them. They don't feel put on the spot. They feel like they're talking to an old friend about the things that they've experienced. In this part of the consultation, you want to talk about everything that they've been through. What terrible haircuts have you had? What do you like about your hair? What part of your hair are you struggling with currently? I like to ask what their favorite haircut was and if they have pictures. And that will allow you to get inside their head and allow you to sort of see where their expectations are and their understanding of their hair on their head. So a lot of people will bring you pictures that are nothing like their actual texture or whatever, but it's our job to figure out why they brought that picture. A lot of the times what I notice with curly hair is that when a client brings a picture, they're not necessarily looking at the fact that the hair texture is different than theirs as much as they are looking at the shape or maybe the length or the layers. So this is a great opportunity for you to discuss with them any goals they have, any pictures they may have, and what they like about those pictures and what they're seeing in the picture versus what you're seeing in the picture. As a trained stylist, you're going to see something different than a client who's just flipping through a magazine and sees, a pretty girl with a great haircut and decides she wants that. So ask these questions, ask these hard questions, like what have you experienced with other stylists that didn't sit well with you, or maybe didn't give you the best experience, because you want to make sure that you're not repeating those mistakes. This is how we gain clients. This is how we build relationships. And this is how we build our clientele through referrals. You can believe that when a client leaves and has a great haircut and their friends are all asking them where they got it done, or, oh, your haircut's great. The first thing they're going to tell them is that you listened and you may have been the first person to listen. I think a lot of stylists that don't do curly hair kind of rush through the consultation just to get through it because they're nervous or they're uncomfortable. And, at some point you have to just get your hands in it and sort of figure your way through it. We've all been in those situations. I've been doing hair 22 years, and every so often there'll be a client that sits in the chair that starts to make me sweat and just panicky. What are we doing? So this is a great opportunity to sit and sort of get all of that out with these clients and you be the professional. And when you command the conversation and you're asking these specific questions, they're going to automatically assume to cover. As far as the service that you're actually providing that day, a lot of things I like to ask are, what are the parameters? So do you have a length issue that you want to a day where actually diffusing it and getting that diffuser right up to the roots and putting the ends all up in there, it'll dry a lot shorter. So when dealing with length and layers and all of that, you want to make sure that you know where the hair is going to go once it's dry. So if they say that they dry their hair every day, or if they say it's 50-50, you can address these issues with the client. Okay, great. So today I'm going to take X amount off your length. This is where it will lay when it's air dried, and this is about where it'll be when it's blow dried or diffuse dry. So you want to make sure that you set that client up to understand why you're asking these questions and how it will change the outcome when they're doing their hair at home. So just make sure that you're very thorough about expectation. I think a lot of times clients walk away unhappy just because somebody overpromised and underdelivered, or maybe didn't spell out exactly what that looks like if you give them what they want. So you want to make sure that you touch on all of those. Another thing I like to ask is if the clients will be wearing their hair straight every day, or curly every day, or if they straighten it occasionally. It doesn't change my approach too much, but again, it comes down to length. So if they say they're going to wear their hair mostly straight, then we need to have a conversation about the length and what that looks like. If they're going to wear it mostly curly, same thing. If they're going to do 50-50, again, you can go over what it'll look like straight and then what it'll look like curly, just so that they're fully informed and understand where those lengths are going to lie. So at this point, a lot of clients that come in for curly haircuts haven't ever had a great haircut. So they're very leery, they're very unsure. They might come in, I just want to trim. They want to see if you're capable of handling their hair. So if you can command the conversation and you can show them your confidence and you can come up with ideas, they're usually willing to play the game and go along with it. So at this point in the conversation, once I have all the information, their daily routines, my boundaries, what they like and don't like, experiences that they haven't been happy with, and then haircuts that they've loved, I can get up and I go into the mirror and I stand behind them. Now, this is the part where I sort of manipulate the hair to show them what I'm thinking. So a lot of times the curly clients come in and their hair is very out of shape, has the like triangle Christmas tree effect, so it's flat on the top and sort of wide at the bottom. And most of them don't love it, but they don't know what else to do. So at this point, I'll be able to manipulate the hair and I'll sort of pull on the top a little bit to give it a little more lift through the areas that I want to show them. So if you're just like lifting the hair up, okay, so if we shorten your layers just to this much, you can kind of mold it. I have a lot of product in my hair, so it acts like curly hair, but curly hair is pretty moldable. So you can kind of mold it into shape and give them a great idea of what it's going to look like when you're done. Of course, get approval from the clients before proceeding with your plan and your haircut. But it's a good way for you to sort of mold their hair and show them what your thoughts are and the direction that you're heading and the volume that you want to give them. I once had a client and she was the cutest French girl, strong accent. I think she was probably a little insecure about that, trying to get her point across. She had really curly hair and it was probably about down to her shoulders. It was one length. She had never had layers and it looked like ramen noodles because she would get up in the morning and to elongate the curls and all of that, she would comb it and brush it and brush it and brush it when it was wet and just not touch it. So it would dry in this like ramen sort of pattern, but it was a ramen bob was the only way that I could describe it. So I wanted to give her layers. I wanted to give her movement and she wasn't having it. She had never had a good haircut. She was terrified. But once we got through the consultation and we talked about what it would do for her and all of that, she allowed me to go forward and I added a bunch of layers and I've never seen someone so happy in my entire life. You would have thought that I just gave her a brand new life, but we were on a third floor so I could see her walk away when she left and she was bouncing down the street. So it's those moments that we live for. It's those moments that we look for in our day to tell us that we're doing the right thing. So that was one story of a client coming in terrified with heavy curly hair PTSD that I was able to turn that around. But it came with a consultation and it came with gaining her trust. So she walked in, was not prepared to let me do anything but a trim. And moving forward, she kept cutting her hair shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter until it was a pixie. So she really lived her best life after that and had some experimental fun with her haircut. I want to talk about a couple things that I try and avoid when cutting curly hair. We'll go into a little bit more when I'm actually doing the demonstration, but these are things that I like to touch on. There's a million ways to skin a cat, and I will say that there are a million schools of thought out there on cutting curly hair and how to approach it. I don't think anyone that has a different opinion than me is wrong. I think that we all have our own different way of doing it, which is what makes us artists and which sets us apart from each other. If we all did the same thing, it'd be pretty boring. My suggestion to you is to get all the education that you can. There's no bad education. So if it's a dry cutting, if it's a wet cutting, if it's bowl cutting, whatever it is, get the education and pick and choose what fits your cutting style and make it work for you. I think that was one of the hardest things for me learning to do hair is that I'm not a very structured cutter. It's never been my thing. I like to cut with the feel of the hair and the shape of the head. And every haircut's different for me. I have, obviously rules that I follow within the way that I cut, but I very much look at hair as a medium that I can carve out a piece of art in. So the way that I approach hair cutting is going to be different than other people. I did get my license apprenticing at an Aveda salon. So I have gone through all the Aveda training, and there's some amazing stuff out there, and a lot of stuff that I learned came from there. So my style of cutting is interesting because it's a mix of a little bit of structure as far as when I'm dealing with perimeters, but when I'm dealing in layers, I go really outside the box and sort of use the layers as my detail in my piece of art. So it's very structured perimeters, and then I sort of go in and use the layers as my what am I trying to say? My I've been in this house for too long. I have no words, but I use the layers to sort of customize it for each client, if that makes sense. So for me, I don't usually cut curly hair dry. If there are some rogue pieces after I get done diffusing the hair that don't seem to fit, I will go in and slide into those a little bit just to break them up. But I would never approach a full haircut when it was dry. So I like to do it wet because it gives me a little bit more control. I like my clients to be able to wear their hair curly and straight. And if you're only doing a curly haircut, or if you're only doing a dry cut and then they go and straighten it, it's very uneven along the edges. The layers will kind of blend okay. You might get some weird spots, but I really like my clients to be able to have versatility. I also like a strong structure. So I like my edges to be very blunt. I like them to be very structured. So when you're doing dry cutting, you sort of lose that because the next day, if they dry their hair, it doesn't dry the same, then you're dealing with sort of different lengths and different spots. I've cut a lot of clients afterwards that had dry haircuts, and I wasn't really happy with what I was seeing when I did it. So there are a few times when it's really textured or super kinky and coily where I may go in when it's dry and sort of refine it, but I would never do the full haircut. I also never elevate sections to cut long layers. So a lot of times in curly hair, we see bulkiness, we see heaviness. A lot of that is in the way that the layers are cut and the way curly hair is 3D. So it grows in a projection like this, right? All over the head. So when you're lifting and you're doing a blunt cut and that drops, you're going to get weird shelving and heaviness that we can avoid with cutting the layers in a different way, which I'll show you in a second. I never use razors or blending shears or texturizers in curly hair. There are a few amazing razor cutters in this industry that do curly haircuts with razors, and they turn out great. It's not my thing. If you take a class and you love it and you can incorporate it into the things that you do behind the chair, you should absolutely do that. It's just not my thing, so you won't ever catch me doing that. Remember to make sure to leave length for shrinkage. The easiest way that I know that I have found to test the shrinkage is when they come in, when it's dry, sort of figure out where the length is when it's curly. So let's say their hair is laying here. So you'd put your finger there and then you would actually take the hair and stretch it down. And that'll show you about what the shrinkage is. It's not a perfect science, but it seems to work pretty well for me. It doesn't work so great if the client it comes in with their hair in a ponytail and they take it out. But if it's the way that they would wear it on a day-to-day basis, then it's a pretty good guess. If they air dry it every day, it'll probably be air dried. If it's diffused every day, it'll probably be diffused. Another way is once it's wet, you can kind of shake it out, give it a couple scrunches in your hand and see where that's falling compared to the stuff the hair next to it when you comb it out. It won't give you an exact, but it'll give you a pretty good estimate. I usually add on another inch for drying shrinkage, just depending on how curly the hair is. So for like medium or coily hair, you can guess an extra inch. But make sure you're scrunching it. So that's a great thing about curly hair. As you're working through the haircut, you can continue to play with the hair and scrunch the hair and look at the shape. And it'll give you a really good idea of where you're headed before it's even dry. So I do that a lot as I'm doing haircuts to check my length of layers and all of that stuff. So don't worry about strict guides when you are cutting layers either. I don't like to use guides per se. I mean, I'll show you when we get into it, but don't stress yourself out. Have fun with it. Curly hair is fun once you get past the uncertainty of it, and you know how to counteract the issues with curly hair with product. It'll make your life a lot easier. So a couple more things and we'll get into the cutting. So I want to talk about curl types. I break it into 4 curl types. It's the easiest to talk about. Anything beyond that gets to be a little bit overkill and overwhelming. So the first one is a loose S, and that is anybody with just wavy hair. Most people have a little bit of bend in their hair, so they would fall under that loose S category. The great thing about loose S is that you can actually add internal layers with a little slide cutting to encourage the curl and give it a little more weightlessness. So this hair type tends to be the flattest of all. It doesn't have as much volume. It doesn't live in projection quite like the other curl types. So it can be a little bit heavier. It requires some layering to actually coax that curl out and get it going. Usually you have to use volumizing products or products with hold to get that curl to dry in there, to diffuse in there and stay. This curl type holds moisture the best. So you aren't going to see as much frizz. It won't be as unruly. The biggest issue with the wavy hair is that it doesn't really hold the curl that well, or that it tends to be kind of flat. So that's a loose S. The next one is a tight S. That one is same as a loose S, just a little tighter. So it's not quite coily like a phone cord, but it's between coily and the loose S. This is where the curl starts to sort of lose moisture on a daily basis. It can get really bulky and heavy in spots depending on how thick it is. It needs a little bit of hold to maintain those curls throughout the day. So you just want to keep that in mind when you're dealing with a tighter S. You want to make sure the moisture is balanced and that you have some type of hold. Curly hair is hardest to maintain and to style because it's the driest. So you can picture tighter the curl, the more dry it will be. Those natural oils and the roots can't travel to the ends of the hair because the hair is so coiled. So it's an easy visual to remember. So the tighter the curl, the hair is going to be drier, it's going to be frizzier. That cuticle is always going to be raised because it's always in a state of lack of moisture. So you're going to deal with frizz and fuzz. The tighter you get, it's going to be more of a problem that you have to address than the looser curls. So that tight S, you just want to make sure that you're moisturizing and using some product with hold. I also use slide cutting in the tight S because a lot of times in tight S, you'll find that the head has different curl textures, curl types all over the head. So I can use the slide cutting to sort of encourage the curl in some of the areas that are more of a loose S to match the tight S. It also is a great way of debulking. So many clients that have curly hair come in and they're like, it's just so big, it's just so much. Can you thin it out? And I've seen hairdressers take the texturizers and just go to town on it. And so what happens then is that you're removing half the hair. And so those curls can't clump together quite the same. And so you just end up with fuzzy, unruly, unmanageable curls. So it's definitely not the way that we want to debulk any kind of hair, especially curly hair. So by doing some slide cutting, we can debulk and take care of all those issues. The next curl type is coily. The easiest way to picture this one is like an old phone cord, as my kids would say, from the 1900s. So this curl type tends to be very dry and very unmanageable. It can even appear to be a kinky hair type if it's so dry that the curl just doesn't form anymore. So this one needs moisture, moisture, moisture. And when you're going in to pick your products, you want to make sure that you're going on the heavier end with the moisture and then a little bit lighter of a hold. It doesn't have issue holding the curl. It's going to hold the curl. It's going to be a corkscrew. It's going to be a phone cord, no matter what you do. So you want to make sure that the first thing you do is add moisture. I like to use products that have moisture and a little bit of hold, just because it sort of lays that cuticle down and holds it there. So the biggest issue as you get into these tighter curls is that cuticle is always raised because it's dry. And even once you replace it with the moisture, that cuticle is like stuck up. So those kind of act like Velcro, they get stuck together and then it gets frizzy. So you want to make sure that you're doing moisture, moisture, moisture. And the way that you apply it matters too. And we'll go over that in the demo. The next curl type is kinky. Kinky, I feel like, is one of the most misunderstood hair textures. I think to some that have never dealt with kinky hair before, it looks just unruly, unmanageable, and like it wasn't done. And that's not the case. It's just a different texture. So coily is like a phone cord, and you can picture kinky is more of a zigzag. So instead of having those round corners, it's more of a sharp sort of bend in the hair. Kinky hair loses moisture within the hour. So every hour that goes by, it's just losing more and more moisture because that cuticle is raised and it's just so open. So with kinky hair, it's never going to be a soft curl. It's never going to be a round curl. You're never going to be able to get definition out of it the way that you can the other curl textures. So that being said, you have to cut it different. When I cut kinky hair, that's a whole separate class. That's a whole separate day, but I work in sections, in small sections. So you can't comb through it. So I do little like 1 inch by 1 inch sections all over the whole head, and I freehand cut it, which is the easiest way to do it. A lot of clients with kinky hair like to get wet sets. It gives them that rounded, softer curl. But my kinky clients, I don't want them washing it every day, obviously, but I need them to wet it and I need them to moisturize it. And that is the only thing that's going to change it, or help it stay moisturized. So many of my clients, coily and kinky, would come in and give me their routine, and they wash it once a week or maybe once every other week, and they'll wear it in protective styles in between or not, or they wear it out and they wrap it at night. The biggest problem is that they're not wetting it down and moisturizing it every day. So it's not gaining length, it's still breaking, all of that. So it's important to tell these clients that are not washing it that isn't enough. They have to go in and actually moisturize it on a daily basis so that it can start to retain the moisture. And if they do that, it'll start to actually hold the moisture longer. So instead of it lasting 3 hours, it'll start lasting 6 hours. And instead of lasting 6 hours, it'll then go to 12 hours. So the more moisture that they're adding on a daily basis, the better it will hold it. And they'll get to a point where you can actually kind of lay that cuticle down a little bit and it'll actually be able to do its job. So these are some of the common misconceptions in curly hair. It's just that the curl is unmanageable, but really it's just the moisture level is sort of unmanageable. So if we can get that under control, a lot of times we have a lot better success getting the curls to behave the way that we want them to. Heat damage is another thing. I have clients that come in with coily hair that, they were flat ironing for 2 weeks while they were on vacation, and they come in and there's actually straight pieces. And those you usually can't bring back. So heat damage is one of those things that once it's in there, it's in there. So it needs to be cut out. And that's about it. So I can't stress moisture enough. That is your number one friend in the curly game. And once you guys can get the moisture under control, everything else becomes easy. So I will start the demo now so we can get this going. I want to be able to show you the layers and then a little bit how to diffuse it, even though that's a little boring to watch. All right, so the most important thing to remember when we're doing curly hair is to make sure that it stays wet. Curly hair is really, really fragile because of its dryness. So when hair starts to dry and get into that in-between wet and dry stage, it's just kind of hard to tear through it. You don't want to damage it anymore. So the best thing to do is to make sure that it's wet. So I'm not going to cut the length of her because there isn't really much here. It's a mannequin. So the curly hair mannequins are never the most amazing. So we're going to deal with what we have. But basically the way I cut the length on curly hair is the way I cut length on every hair. So whatever you feel comfortable with as far as cutting length, I would stick with that. As far as tension goes, I use a medium tension when I'm doing the length. I'll give you guys a quick shot of it, even if I'm not doing it. So I do use the wide end of the comb because, again, I don't want it to be pulled too tight. I want that curl to be able to do what it wants to do within reason, but I still want to keep some control. So I always have my clients look down when I cut their length. The reason is clients tend to, as you're combing, have you ever noticed their heads kind of do one of these? And then you find yourself kind of bending down and trying to cut it. And then when you realize they're doing that and you straighten them out, this bottom part ends up being longer than everything else. And it's not straight and it's not even. So I like them to look down. It just gives me a little bit better control of what's going on. So I always start in the middle and I'll comb it down. I don't want any elevation because, again, that's going to create some length under here that I don't want to see. I think you guys can see that I'm not pulling it so tight that the curl is gone. You can still see there's a little S pattern in there. So you just want to make sure you pull it with some medium tension and go from there. All right, on to the cutting. So my client today told me that she wants to have bigger, more fun hair. So we're gonna give her some layers so that she can get some volume out of that. So first I'm gonna start by creating a couple pie-shaped sections back here. I like to work in pie-shaped sections, and I don't normally do them before the haircut. But when I was first starting this and I was trying to keep organized because you're not using a guide, I do suggest when you're first learning to go ahead and section in pie sections so that you can organize your work and keep yourself straight. And again, we want these to be clean, but we want them to be clean in the way that it's not going to be overwhelming for you to work with this much hair. So when you're trying to decide how wide to keep your sections, that's a per client kind of thing because it depends on how thick their hair is. So if they've got a lot of really thick hair, you're going to want to make sure that you're taking smaller sections so that you can control it. If you take too big of a section, it's just too much hair to cut through and you're not getting clean cuts. And you want to make sure that it's something that you can manage. And like any layers or any sections, you don't want it to be so wide that you're pulling the outsides in this far because then you're going to get some weird over directing. So just keep that in mind when you're making your sections. They're pie-shaped sections, so obviously they get a little wider at the bottom. The reason is I typically wouldn't layer that part of the hair. So anything below the occipital, I wouldn't layer that in curly hair because it's going to make it kind of thin and weird unless I was going for, a super, I want to say aggressive, and that's not the word. What's the word I'm trying to think of? Super severe, not aggressive, super severe shag type haircut. Then obviously all of this would be layered. But for the typical layered curly cut, I'm just giving you guys a basic today because we don't have 3 days to go over a million different haircuts. But yeah, I would never really cut layers down there. We want to keep that part kind of thick because what happens is all of this dries, it bounces up. And then if all of this is layered, it ends up getting sort of see-through and strange. So I like to keep the bottom intact. Remember, guys, I like strong perimeters. Okay, so hopefully you guys can see this. Let's try and see if that helps. Nah. All right, so these are a bunch of pie-shaped sections put into the hair all across the back. Now, I didn't do the sides yet. We'll do that when we get there. I want to start with this part. So I'm going to show you guys 2 ways of doing this. I'll start in the center-ish. So remember, I don't need to worry about anything below here. This is below the occipital, so I don't want to cut any of that. Now, when I'm cutting the layers, I have the clients look down. The reason I have them look down is because if they were looking up, my whole body would be sideways trying to do this. So I want to make sure that my posture is good and that I can maintain doing this all day long on clients. So by having them put their head down, I'm not having to contort my body in such a weird way. So to cut the layers, again, I don't want to elevate and add weight anywhere. So I'm going to comb it all into my hand and bring it down. All right, so I want the layers to start pretty short. And you can see this mannequin head's kind of weak. So right here, I'm going to take maybe 2 inches off this top layer just to give myself a little more bounce. So I'm going to do it again. I'm going to comb it down. And once I'm in that position, I'm going to come at like this. Little tiny cuts all the way down this section. Now, I like doing this because as I'm cutting, I can see what I'm cutting. I can see each and every hair before I cut it. So I'm able to see exactly where the layers are going to fall by doing that. Now, when I'm done with that section, I'm going to scrunch it and see if I like the shape. It's pretty good. It's getting there. She's got a little more lift, so I'm going to take a little bit more. Now, the cool thing about this technique is that depending on how I place my shears, I'm placing them out a little bit. But if I wanted it to be more severe, if I wanted it to be an aggressive shag, I could point my shears more inward and it would take more off. So I'll show you an example because it's the back and my client will never see it if she's got 2 different haircuts. So this time I'm going to point my shears towards the head a little bit more and I'm going to take out a little more. So depending on how much weight and bulk they want removed out of this back area is how I will determine at which degree to place my shears. Like the light's kind of blowing out some. All right, so I don't know if you guys can see that, but it took a little more out of this area by pointing my shears closer to the or towards the ground more. So if you want a little fuller here, more out this way, more bulk removed, you would point them further down. So there's varying degrees, right? So you might want a lot of fullness at the bottom, maybe a little less, none. So that's kind of how I use that technique. But by doing this, you can see there's no heavy spots, there's no bulky spots. It's kind of got an even shape going through. And I'm not creating any hard lines, which is the biggest, most important thing. If you have somebody that's got really long hair or kind of fine hair even, and they want a lot of volume, but they don't have a lot of hair down here. One of the challenges of this model is that exact problem. You would take and go the other way and you'd hold it up. So for this one, I'm going to have my client have her head up. And get some more so my shirt doesn't block you guys. And we'll do that same technique, but we're going to go straight up with it. Now I am elevating this hair, but I'm not. Let me move this camera just a little. I'm elevating this hair, but I'm not making a hard straight cut, so it's okay. So we're going to pull it all up, and I'm going to cut about 2 inches off. Again, I'm doing little cuts. I'm not shredding. I'm not sliding. I'm doing little tiny cuts. And what that does is this technique and the cutting the layers like this with these little tiny cuts, it also creates a short and long situation. So you're starting from shortest and it's going to longest. So what that's going to do is encourage the curl. So if you're dealing with somebody that has a loose S curl type and they have a hard time getting their curls to come out, cutting their layers this way will help that because it's going to give it that short to long effect. All right, so guides, how am I deciding how much to take off? So for this next section, we'll go back down so I can show you how we're doing this. Have my girl look down. My head's wobbly. I'm going to pull it down again. Not the shot. I got my husband here holding my mannequin head. He'll be on Friday with you guys. He's pretty excited. So I take a hair from the section previous and I sort of line it up with that section I'm about to cut just to give myself an idea of where I'm cutting. I either go a little shorter or I go a little longer, never exact. And the reason is I want these layers to be staggered. And if they're staggered a little bit, you're never going to get a hard line or a weight line or anything weird. So that's why I say I don't like to use a guide. I'm using a suggested area to cut in, but I'm not using an exact guide. So I'm going to bring it down. Now this section before was one that we did up. So I'm going to go a little longer because I don't want it to get any shorter in that section. So I'm going to go about an inch below that. Open, close, open, close, open, close, open, close. Again, let's come back in, check our shape. She's drying. I love these curly mannequins because they're like straight hair that has been permed to oblivion. So I feel like no matter what I'm doing, it's never as pretty as I want it to be. All right. So for this next section, I'm going to go up again. That's another thing is with this cutting method, you can alternate. You can go up with some and down with some, and it'll create a little bit of variance in the haircut and give it a little bit more movement and curly interest. All right, so next section. It's like doing a real client that won't sit still. All right, so we're going to hold it up. I'm going to take a piece of hair, match it up. Hang on, move this. I feel like I picked a bad shirt to wear, but it was this or a black shirt. And I feel like either way, nobody would have been able to see what I was doing. Sometimes I go back through that same section and recomb it and just make sure I got everything I wanted to get. Again, we're carving haircuts we're carving art into our haircuts. All right. Now I'm on the side, so I want her to lean her head sideways, right? So I'm not hurting myself. Need to get some duct tape. Now, once you guys have been doing this for a while, you won't need to keep getting your guide and holding it to the next section. You'll get pretty good at knowing where you've been cutting and eyeballing it. So for a while, these haircuts will take you an extraordinary amount of time just to get your way through. Is that your show and tell? Oh, you're tightening it. All right, we're good. Maybe. So I always get asked how long I book out for haircuts. Guys, help! Am I good? Okay, I'm just gonna do this. All right, so I always get asked how long I take to do my curly haircuts. I got pretty quick at it for a while, or after a while, but basically I book out 30 to 45 minutes if they have finer textured hair. And if they have more kinky or coarse hair, I will book out a lot longer. I have one kinky client. That sounds terrible. One client with kinky hair, and her hair takes me approximately 2 hours just because she's got so much of it. So that haircut takes me a long time. But for the most part, most people are 45 minutes to an hour. I learned quick to start asking a lot of questions when they're booking. And I would, if you guys do online booking, I would suggest doing 3 different curl types, or 3 different curl appointment options. And that way the client will at least know that there is a difference. So as soon as I started doing that, it made things a lot easier. So I'm going to do this one up. It made things a lot easier because the client knew, obviously I'm asking these questions for a reason, and they would start to question like, oh, I must have like super thick hair, super long hair, whatever. So I found, if anything, the clients usually would pick a time that was too much, which is better than not enough, in my opinion. All right, so now we're going to move on to the front. Let me show you guys this shape that's going on back here. So you can see we shortened the layers, so it's giving her a lot more oomph up here than she had before. In some of the sections, I went a little aggressive in the layering here, so it gets a little less bulky there. But again, this is a mannequin head, and they're never really full down here no matter what, so it's hard to get a good gauge. But you can see the general shape that we're going for and what a big difference this has made so far. And as you can see, there's no weird weight lines or areas that aren't blending with the rest of it. So that's good. That's exactly what we're looking for. All right, so next we're going to move on to the sides. Now the sides, I work more in rectangles because the head is flatter up here. So we're working in a flat section this way as opposed to the round of the head in the back. So we want to make sure that we're dealing with that. The sides are a little more complicated because you've got the ear here. So of course, we always have to deal with the ear to make sure we're not giving anyone holes. We've got about 10 more minutes. So I'm going to cut, I'm just going to cut one side so you guys can see it. I want to be able to make sure that I can go over product application because it's super important. I need like a 6-hour class with all of you guys, and then I could cover everything. When we started teaching, I hated public speaking. It's probably still not my favorite, but I remember when I got my first show at my first class at my first show, and they were hour and 15 minutes. And I was like, how am I going to fill an hour and 15 minutes? And now I wish I had 6 hours. I don't know. Things have changed, I guess, but and now we're doing even weirder things because we're doing things on platforms like this where I can't even interact with you guys. So I assume that you're all just sitting back and laughing at my jokes that I slip in every now and again. The fact that I can't deal with a mannequin stand, but I can win Naha, but I can't operate a tripod. I don't know what that says about me. She's pretty, but stupid. My husband's here laughing. He thinks I'm funny. All right, so I went through on this side, and we have just little rectangle sections. So when I'm cutting this side of the head, I'm going to face the client. If I was cutting this side, I would stand behind her, and you can see why. So if we were cutting this way, I would want my shears to be on this side. Since we're cutting this side, not turning this thing, it's going to fall apart. We're going to stand on this side. So let's take this first section. We're going to comb it up. Now, I always go up on the sides no matter what, because remember, we've got this ear over here. So if I were to go down with it, I definitely run the risk of taking out too much and not being able to come back from that. You'd lose a client forever if her ear was showing. So I'm going to grab a section from the back as my quote unquote guide. I know where we're going, so I'm going to go ahead and open, close, open, close, open, close. it sometimes helps to say that out loud to yourself when you're doing it so that you don't accidentally start slide cutting. Same thing with the next section. Open, close, open, close, open, close. I've also started doing my fringes this way, even on straight hair. So instead of going through and cutting a face frame where you comb it all down by the face and then you kind of angle your shears and go down like this, I've been doing my face frames this way because it leaves like this part intact. Whereas when you're like combing it down and sort of going at it like this, sometimes this hair gets like mixed up in it, or I don't know. I always struggle with face frames. So this started doing this on straight hair and I actually really like it. So if you guys have a sister to practice on, call them over. It just creates a much softer face frame, but it leaves the entire front hairline intact, you know, aside from the top. But I really like it and it works really well. I'm sure you guys have mannequins at home. Now is a great time to practice. Practice these techniques sooner than later. I don't want you guys to watch this and be all excited and then lose everything that we did today and everything that we covered because you didn't practice. So make sure, even if you're not confident and maybe not doing it right, just practice anyways, because you'll figure stuff out on your own. And that's okay. Not everything can be taught. Sometimes you got to figure it out. Most of the way that I do things is I took a bunch of classes. I took bits and pieces of everything everyone taught me, and one naha. Guys, I won naha. No, I'm just kidding. Didn't help me with clients behind the chair. All right, so now that we've got this done, you can see it's a great shape going on. Sometimes in the front, when I get done, I'll sort of arrange it and scrunch it and see if it's short enough. I feel like that face frame's short enough. And then when I get done, before I style it, now mind you, I didn't do this side, so we're not going to do that too much, but I'll just run my hands through it like this. Because of the way that we cut, every so often you'll catch a piece that was missed, that didn't get cut or whatever. You just want to make sure that you run your fingers through it. And sometimes through the top, I'll even do like a cross check to make sure they're obviously not lining up because I didn't cut that side. But through the top of it, I'll go through and make sure that it's matching up enough that it won't look weird once it's dry. Again, we're carving haircuts in. These aren't super structured haircuts. We don't need everything to be perfect at all. We like movement in curly hair. Oh, I'm going to show you guys a slide cutting technique real quick. Now her hair is kind of coily because it's like fried and permed. But if you had somebody with wavy hair, or that tight S that needed some debulking, this is how we would handle that. So I'll go through and I'll look for heavy spots or uneven spots, and I will pull a section. And it doesn't have to be the same sections. You're just looking for parts that may be kind of heavy. So you'll pull a section like this, and you'll let it kind of hang like that. So when I do that, and she doesn't need it, so it's going to be hard to see, but you'll see like bulky areas that are like clumping together, or you'll know like, okay, I saw a shelf in here that I want to break up, or I want to enhance the curl. So you just pull it straight off the head, hands parallel to the head, and I'll put my shears in. And again, open, close, open, close, open, close. Now I'm following the shape of this curl. Hers are little, so it's not quite the way it normally, but picture if it was an S, like a big S. You could stick your shear in where that bend is, open, close, open, close, open, close, open, close, open, close, and follow it all the way through to the end. So by doing that, you're creating all these short pushing long within the curl, which is enhancing the curl. It's taking out bulk. It's giving it more lightness and airiness. So if they're having a hard time with volume, a lot of times I'll do this technique all throughout the top, and it'll give them a big boost. One more time. Practice this one too. This is not, super hard rocket science. Just find your groove. Open, close, open, close, open, close, open, close. A lot of times my wavy clients are straighter at the bottom, so I'll like lift all this up out of the way and go at it from the underneath. All right, so I just want to show you super quick. We have 5 minutes on how to apply product. So we're going to start in the back with her. I always like to start in the back and work my way up. If I try to do this all at once, I'm not going to get it evenly coated throughout the hair. So I want to make sure that I'm every single hair. The mistake that most people make is they just scrunch curly product in. But what happens is then your product is on the ends, but not on the roots. So you'll have really fuzzy hair everywhere else. So I'm going to start with a product that has a lot of moisture. It's a cream-based product, a lot of moisture with a tiny bit of hold. But I'm using it more for the moisture. So what I want to do is start, and with curly hair, the tighter the curl, the further up that you can go with the moisture products. Coiling kinky hair is dry all the way to the root. So don't be afraid to apply quite a bit of product to make sure that you're evenly coating it everywhere. And you can see that I'm applying it and I'm running my hands through it. And what I'm doing is I'm using the heat from my hands and the motion of my hands and my palms and my fingers to run my hair down this hair shaft. But what it's doing is it's laying that cuticle down. It's working that moisture into the hair and making that cuticle pliable so that after I apply this product, I can go over with a hold product, a gel of some sort that will actually set that cuticle in place so that when we dry it, it stays under control. So the next product I'm going to use is just a little bit of defining serum. It's just a little light gel. And I'm doing that same thing. I'm using the heat in my hands to lay that cuticle down and make sure that it's coated throughout the hair. So then after that, I can go through and scrunch it back up. People always think I'm nuts when I apply product like that, like it's going to pull the curl out. Oh, if only it were that easy, it'd be super rich. All right. So we're almost out of time. I just want to give you a couple diffuse tips real quick. So I have a diffuser on my dryer. It's an amazing diffuser. It's by CIC Beauty. Friends of mine created this in the last year, and I love it. You can put oils in there, essential oils that they have, and they have a couple of products, but look them up. So I'll turn the dryer on low speed, high heat, and I feed those ends in and hold it here. Now I would never start in the back of the head. I just wanted to show you how I would feed that hair in. If I was drying, most people want volume on the top. So what I do is if they have a fringe, I'll have the client lean over in the chair and I'll dry that first. And then I'll have them lean back in the chair and I will focus on the top, the crown, this top area. I dry all of that and then I have them sit up and I dry the sides and the bottom. That way you get maximum volume out of the top and it doesn't, drying the bottom will just disturb all that and make it dry flat. So you want to dry this first, sit them up, and then dry the back and the sides so it doesn't disturb all of that. And you are good to go. All right. I hope you guys got a lot out of today. I see a bunch of questions now that I haven't been able to answer. Hopefully I can answer these after. One of the staff can help me, tell me if I can do that. Let's see. Really struggle working with curly hair. It's definitely scary. I would say even if they don't give you one in school, they're not that much. It's worth the investment. Find friends that have curly hair and maybe they'll let you practice on them. Don't be afraid of it. The biggest thing is the moisture. So, and practice. I mean, once you practice with it, you'll get a little more comfortable. Everything's scary at first. I like to cut curly hair wet so that my clients have versatility and they can wear it straight or curly. As far as wearing it straight and curly, because I have a structured perimeter, it's always going to be straight. The layers will be a little bit different, but even when you straighten them, because we didn't put any hard lines on it, no one will see the difference in the lengths. Yeah, just practice, 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 practice. Somebody said they like curly hair, but it takes some getting used to. So the techniques that I just went over, the layering, that somebody asked, what's the best way to cut curly hair so that the curls are more dominant and has more volume? So these techniques, the slide cutting, the layering, the not putting weight lines in it and creating volume up on top, and cutting internally will help with definition, but as well as volume. Some of these are, can you describe some of the layering techniques? I don't know if you can get access to the video afterwards. Hopefully you can, to go over all the curly techniques. I think I have coily hair. Always thought I had kinky hair. That's so true. That happens a lot. A lot of times it's just lack of moisture that makes it appear a little more harsh than it actually is. Prevent heat damage. Definitely turn your irons down and use a heat protectant, or don't use them at all. My staff always laughed at me. I didn't even own a flat iron. And if clients wanted it flat ironed, I would send them to somebody else in the salon. This is a pivot point mannequin. We got the pivot. This is a pivot point mannequin. This curl type is straight and permed to no end, but I would say it's probably between tight. Well, it's probably tight S, with a little coily finish. I like to, he said the name is underneath. This is Amber. I also like to take straight mannequins and perm them with like a purple, so I can practice. So you guys could try that. This is almost too curly to get those techniques in. So yeah, those are, I like to perm them, but this mannequin, I just wanted to see what she had. It was a new one. Can't see any, there's a bunch of questions I'm trying to get to. Do you use a different technique for curly hair if they sometimes straighten it? I don't. I will use the same one. If they sometimes straighten it, like I said, because of the way the layers are put in, there aren't any hard lines. So even if they were to straighten it, I cut a lot of long hair, like long straight hair like this too. So play with these techniques because they're not just for curly hair. I started to play with them on straighter hair and I actually loved the result that I was getting. So you guys should try it out because you might really like it for straight hair. And it's sort of, everyone wants that sort of like beachy, unfinished hair. And if it's like real straight, you can sometimes do the internal and external cutting like this, and it'll help encourage it just because of the short hair pushing long hair. But volume's usually the hardest, but that would be cutting these layers shorter on top and then adding those internal layers. Yeah, the hair is so much fuller. So much fuller. If a curly bang is wanted, I cut those in a couple different ways. If I have another minute, I can show you guys real quick. I have a stylist that wanted curly bangs, and she was wearing them both straight and curly. So I wanted to come up with a way to do that. And the way that I found is instead of doing a separate section, I was doing it where I would do a triangle in the front and then do the bang length and then kind of layer into it. But I found that by doing the layers like I did them everywhere else in the front, but a little shorter, it seems really dark. I don't know if there we go. All right. So if I was doing, oh no, we lost her. All right. If I was doing a bang in the front, nobody wants to be my client now. I abuse them. So I'm going to take just the tiniest section in front and I'll show you guys in 1 second. All right. So I'll start with this tiny, tiny section right in front. And So I know that I want it to be, let's say, a longer bang. I want it to be in this area. When I measured her, her shrinkage was about 2 inches. So I want to cut maybe another 1.5 inches off. This is really hard to do it so you guys can see it. So I'll go in and I'll take another 1.5 inches. Now, what that's doing is it's creating a longer piece out here. So you're going from short to long. And I want to check it. I feel like that one hair is just a little long. I'm going to go in and just take a little bit more. All right. Now, since I have that set, I know it's where I want it. I like it. I'm going to go on to the next section. And normally when I was doing the face frame, I took the sections were a little thicker, but because I'm dealing with the bang and I want everything to fall just right, I'm working in really tiny sections. So I'm going to use that piece that I did before, hold it up. And I want these to be around the same. So I didn't do varying lengths on this one. I made it pretty much match. And again, by doing this, we're leaving this longer, so it's going to blend into the face frame perfectly. Whereas before, when you're blocking it out with curly hair, sometimes it's hard to get those to connect because you've got this separate section that's trying to work into all of this. But when it curls up, this does one thing and this does another. So by cutting it like this, it seamlessly blends it into the rest of the haircut so that you don't have an issue. So one of my stylists that I kind of figured this out on, she likes to straighten her hair and wear it curly. So I needed to come up with a way to cut it that would allow her to do both. And the cool thing is by cutting it this way, if she straightens it, it flows perfect. She has no issues. It looks perfect, straight or curly. All right, so I'm going to start going a little longer as I get into the rest of the haircut, but I do still want it to blend. So I just took it a hair longer on that next section. And if I keep going like this, I'll get to a point where it's not any longer. It'll just blend. So practice this, practice doing straight hair like this too for the heavier, kind of swoopier bangs. It's one of my favorite bang techniques, and I also feel like you have a little bit more control while you're doing it because you're not going in and just like lobbing off a huge section. You're doing it like piece by piece by piece, so you can check it as you go, which is always great. But yeah, once you got product in this, and I would have her lean forward and I would dry it. I can hit it with a Barber so you guys can see. I didn't put product up here, so it's not going to be a super dead on. So how do I decide if I bring the hair straight up or down? So it depends on the hair. If I want more volume in the top, sometimes I'll do it down to get the layers in this area, and then I'll bring it up to get the volume on top. If they have really fine hair, I'll just go straight up because I want to leave as much weight on the sides as I can because they're already kind of fine and struggling with having a lot of hair on the sides. If it's really thick, I'll do it down so I can take some of the bulk out of the sides by cutting those layers a little shorter. I swear, if you guys start practicing with these on your mannequins, you'll start to figure out what works and what doesn't. Again, I didn't teach a haircut that has like a million special sections. Like, it's really about kind of listening to the hair and figuring out what it needs as far as moisture and layers and all of that. So you guys can see the bang. Bring her in closer. It is a little shorter in the center, which is great, and then it gets a little longer as you go to the outside. Obviously, you could take them shorter or longer, but I think that's a great length for my fit client. This side looks a little wild that I didn't cut. This kind of shows you guys the difference of what she looked like before versus after. All right. So there's a lot more bulk over on that side than this side. Favorite curly products. I have quite a few. I'm using Original Moxie right now. I really like it. It's a local brand in Michigan. She's done great products for curly hair. And they have a lot of products that, you know, mainstream product companies don't always have. Yeah, we all need haircuts. Somebody said how badly their curls need a haircut. I've decided to try to grow mine out while I'm locked in my house for 2 months. Yes, curly hair needs a ton of product. I think that was one of the most shocking things when I really started doing a lot of curly hair and started playing with different textures, is like the amount of product I could use. I have super fine, super straight. Like if you look at my hair too hard, it gets greasy. So I think for me, that was the hardest part, is that I was never using enough product. So once I started using all the products that I should, I was a little scared and shocked, but it made a big difference. I've never used Diva, and I've never used Diva's hand diffuser. I really like this one. I like this one just because of the angle. It makes it easy to use to do different spots on the head without having to like point your dryer directly at someone. Ergonomically, it's a little bit easier for me. Yeah, perm your mannequin. Somebody said it's a great idea to perm your mannequin because you get practice perming and then you also get practice curly cutting. All right, guys, I feel like I got through most of the questions. So if you have any other questions, let me know. They all know how to get a hold of me. But I appreciate you guys listening to me. I'm glad you were all here. I wish I had more time, but I appreciate all of you. And stay strong and keep learning. And hopefully we can get back there and teach in real life soon.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Lauren, for answering all the questions. We had so many. For all of you that are here on the aesthetic side, we are starting our next portion of today's series with Patrick Naughton. Patrick is from Sciton, Sciton is a company that creates lasers, and he will be going over all the different types of lasers that Sciton creates. Sciton's mission is to provide systems that are technical and the performance leaders for their applications. They offer unparalleled reproducibility, efficiency, and speed, giving physicians the highest possible value, provide extraordinary reliability and durability, and solve real problems to improve the human condition. So excited to have him on. He will be presenting as a presentation, so you're going to be seeing a lot of his slides on the screen here. Once again, my name is Carrie Kennedy. I'm the director of the Institute of Beauty and Wellness and the Aveda Institute Madison. We are so excited for you to join us on our Beauty Cares series. Continue to ask great questions, and let's give a warm welcome for Patrick.
Hi, and thank you for joining us here on Aesthetic TV. I'm Dr. Andrew Warden with my co-host, Stuart Brazel.
It's great to be here.
That's so nice to be back. We're here today to talk about a new breakthrough in anti-aging technology that can actually turn back the clock and reverse the signs of aging skin.
Well, I have to say that sounds pretty amazing. Dr. Warden, what is this technology?
Well, it's called Forever Young BBL. That's short for Broadband Light from Sciton. And to help explain what the Forever Young BBL can do, how it works, and what makes it so different, we've invited prominent dermatologist and researcher Dr. Patrick Bitter. Dr. Bitter is certified by the American Board of Dermatology and is a pioneer in the use of pulse light energy. He's a developer of the photofacial procedure and author of several groundbreaking papers on the use of pulse light for skin rejuvenation. Welcome to Aesthetic TV, Dr. Bitter.
Thank you very much for inviting me to talk about this exciting breakthrough in skin health.
Well, we're thrilled to have you. And our viewers are always interested in keeping up with the very latest developments in aesthetic medicine in order to look and feel their very best. Before we get into the details of the Forever Young BBL, can you explain a little bit about what BBL is?
That's a very interesting question, Stuart. The difference between BBL and laser is that a laser is a single color of light, and BBL is hundreds of colors of light. And if I may illustrate, from the handpiece that comes in contact with the skin, hundreds of colors of light are flashed at the same time. And that explains the results that we see with the photofacial procedure that are different from a laser, where the skin looks clearer, it looks brighter, it looks smoother, it looks healthier.
So the whole thing is that you're targeting different wavelengths of lesions of colors, correct?
That's exactly right. So a laser is able to really target specifically a very limited element in the skin, and hundreds of colors of light in BBL are able to treat multiple things at the same time.
I see. Well, that's right. Pulse light treatments have been around for years and are used to treat acne, rosacea, freckles, and age spots, among other things. They've also been used for facial rejuvenation, but I understand that today, Dr. Bitter has some news about two groundbreaking clinical studies he's just published in conjunction with Stanford University Dermatology Department that show some really incredible results. Can you tell us something about that interesting research?
Thank you. The first study, we looked at the gene expression in skin cells, and we designed the study, I and my coworkers at the dermatology department at Stanford University School of Medicine, to treat age skin, 70-year-old forearm skin. We did a series of 3 treatments and then removed a sample of skin from a treated area and untreated area. That was looked at Stanford and analyzed to see the differences in gene expression. We know that old skin cells and young skin cells express genes differently, and what we found in the study was very stunning.
So tell us about those results you found.
Well, Dr. Horton, we know that every skin cell has about 25,000 genes, and we looked at about over 2,000 of those. And we found that with the Forever Young BBL treated skin, over 1,000 genes were rejuvenated.
This is really cutting edge stuff, treating actually the genetic component to slow down or reverse that aging process.
This was the first study that has actually shown that you could take living cells in a human and be able to alter the gene expression and make them act like younger cells. And a study like this has never been done before.
Great stuff.
Yeah, and I know you also did a second study. Can you tell us more about that?
So in the second study, it was designed, I designed that to answer the question, really, what happens when you get a number of treatments done over a period of years? There were some questions in the early days when we were using this type of technology. Maybe it would be a bad thing to get a lot of treatments. And so I had 15 subjects that had at least one photofacial treatment with BBL over at least an 8-year period of time, and it had no other kind of cosmetic surgery. And what we found in the study, when we had a panel of 500 experts, including dermatologists and plastic surgeons, evaluating the before and after photos, was the following. And if you look up here, you can see the data. At the very top, the blue bar that says 46 was the actual average age of the 15 subjects. The green bar at the top, 45, was the assessed age. That was the age that the 500 investigators or evaluators thought they looked at their before photos. The subjects aged on average 9 years. So in their after photos, their average was 55 years of age. That's the blue bar at the very bottom. But the green bar above that is the assessed age. That's the age that the evaluators thought they were in their after photos. They thought they were 45. And all of us know that nature, when you go from age 45 to age 55, nature does not make us look younger. So what we have learned from this long-term study was that The Forever Young BBL treatment from Sciton is the closest that we have come to the fountain of youth for aging skin. And in my opinion, Forever Young BBL treatment is the best non-invasive treatment that somebody can do for their skin to slow down skin aging.
So you're telling us that you can show that you're actually making skin look younger? That's, I have to say, wow.
Well, Stuart, that's what we discovered in the study that we did with Forever Young BBL. It's very impressive.
And we have some photos that you brought to show those results, right?
Yes, I'd like to show you in the photos, and we can take a look at. So we know that with Sciton's BBL technology, you can take aged, sun-damaged skin and make it look dramatically better with no downtime.
That's dramatic.
Extremely dramatic.
Now, in the study, when we took, some of our subjects were younger, and our subject here is 38 years of age, and what you're looking at in the after photo is her 10.5 years older, with having done nothing more than about 3 Forever Young BBL treatments per year. And you can see that she's basically aged hardly at all. Now, what if you take somebody who's older than that? And this subject is 58 when she started her treatments, and the after photo, she's nearly 9 years older. She'll go from age 58 to 67 with nothing more than about 2 to 3 treatments for Forever Young BBL per year.
Impressive results, huh?
And,
extremely.
And women typically really find that this aging around the mouth, where they get the lines, the wrinkles, that cobbly texture to the skin and the chin and the upper lip. And you can see with a non-invasive, no downtime treatment, the Forever Young BBL, that that skin looks dramatically better 9.5 years later.
Yeah, both the discolorations and the fine lines are better following that treatment. And finally, the hands give it away.
Yeah, the hands tell age.
Yeah.
And you're very right at that. So, and I believe that Forever Young BBL is really the best way to be able to rejuvenate non-invasively skin. And one of the remarkable things about the treatment is that we can treat and get the same anti-aging delaying of skin aging anywhere on the body.
I have to say that seeing is really believing, and those are some truly fantastic examples of what Forever Young BBL can do. We were both kind of going, oh my goodness.
For sure, and I mean, I have to say those are really very impressive images, Dr. Bitter. What's the ideal patient to treat with this type of technology?
This is a good question. Pretty much anybody that begins to have visible aging changes in their skin or sun damage is a good candidate for a Forever Young BBL treatment. I think that for those people in their late 30s and early 40s, it makes so much sense now to start doing Forever Young BBL treatments. 1 to 2 to 3, 4 treatments a year. I think optimally 4 treatments a year is what will really delay aging the best.
So tell us a little, what's the best treatment technique when you're using Forever Young BBL?
This is a very important question. The results that a person will experience really depend on 3 important things. 1 is the optimal settings that the doctor will choose. 2 is doing enough passes. And this is one of the breakthroughs that Sciton's BBL technology affords us, is that it's so fast we're able to do multiple passes, and that gets better results. It makes the treatment more comfortable, and it makes it very safe. And the 3rd is doing enough treatments. Those 3 things will really determine the results that somebody will get.
And really for all skin types?
Good point. BBL technology is safe to be able to treat even dark skin types. It does take a certain level of expertise on the practitioner's part to know how to treat darker skin, but it is very safe to treat dark skin.
And in terms, you touched on it slightly, the discomfort when getting the treatment, how would you describe that?
Well, some people feel relatively little, and other people will feel like a hot flash or a snap. There's no discomfort that is persisting afterwards. So treatments are simple. They take about 15 minutes to do a face. There's essentially no downtime with that. It takes 2 to 3 minutes to treat a back of a hand. And I've trained about 5,000 doctors in the art of doing photofacial treatments over the last 10 years around the world. So there are a number of people well trained in knowing how to do Forever Young BBL treatments.
Well, that's so important. It's so important with any treatment or technology that the physician treating the patient, like you said, knows how to properly choose the ideal settings and number of treatments for that patient's skin type, age, and condition.
This is very true.
And I'm sure our viewers would like to know more about the patient experience. So what can a patient expect when they come in and receive a treatment with Forever Young BBL?
Well, most people will say after treatment it was a lot easier than they kind of thought or anticipated it would be. But again, for a face, it takes about 15 minutes to do a treatment from start to finish. And afterwards, people can apply makeup, put sunblock on, and go about their usual activities.
I have to say, after hearing about these great results and seeing such impressive examples with Forever Young BBL, I'm convinced. So how do people at home find a physician in their area?
Well, the best way to find a physician who's trained in the art of doing the Forever Young BBL treatment is foreveryoungbbl.com and go to the physician locator.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bitter, for joining us here to inform our viewers about what really looks like an amazing breakthrough in skin rejuvenation and anti-aging treatments.
Yes, thank you so much, Doctor, for showing us how Forever Young BBL can actually turn the clock on the aging process. And it's truly very impressive, and I'm sure all of our viewers are excited to hear about this new treatment option, as I have been super excited.
Well, it's been wonderful being invited to come and talk about what Sciton's BBL technology can do. Thank you very much.
And to all our viewers out there, we really appreciate you spending time with us. I'm Dr. Andrew Warden.
And I'm Stuart Brazel. Until next time, stay tuned
and stay beautiful.
All right. Hey, everybody. This is Carrie again. And we are going to try something a little bit different. We'll see if it works. You know, in distance learning, I think we've all learned how to be flexible and nimble. Well, right now, Patrick is experiencing what I think we all hope we would not experience, which is his internet is out. Yikes. So we're going to try something real quick. I have him connected, and we are going to look at just first, Patrick, if you can introduce yourself a little bit and speak to just Sciton and what, I guess, what you do, and a little bit more about the BBLs and different lasers that you have.
You bet. Thank you very much for having me, Carrie. Can everybody hear me? Good?
Yeah, go ahead.
Carrie? Okay. Excellent. So, hey, thanks for having me again in this weird old lockdown time. As Carrie said, I'm holding up at home as well and having some internet issues. So let's just kind of mumble through this and see if we can make it work for you. So, again, my name is Patrick Naughton. I work for a company called Sciton. That's Sciton, which stands for the Science of Photons. We make all kinds of medical aesthetic lasers. Been in the business for 24 years as a company, and our lasers do everything from removing fat to removing wrinkles and age spots and taking care of vascularity, endovenous ablation, and then some female health stuff. I understand you guys just got finished watching the video on Broadband Light with Dr. Patrick Bitter. And BBL itself is a modality within our company, one of the 15. And it addresses all kinds of issues that you've just seen. So BBL will address any kind of color in your skin that you want to get rid of, meaning sun damage, or what we like to just call freckles in day-to-day life. It'll get rid of vascularity, so anything that's red. It'll get rid of bruising, and it'll also do some hair removal. And that's done by flashing that visible spectrum of light on the skin. And then we create a target for what you want to get rid of. So if you're after targeting browns, we will filter that light so that it'll only see that brown and do the controlled damage that it needs to do to then get rid of that brown spot or age spot.
Patrick, that was amazing in that video where you could see such a dramatic difference. And I wanted to let people, there was actually a couple of questions that people had and I just wanted to point out it was literally reducing age difference by 9 years. Is that correct?
Yeah. So what that study was done that Dr. Bitter talked about, they took all the patients in the study. They all got the same treatment over a 9-year period of time. They basically got 3 complete Forever Young BBL treatments, which is a certain protocol that we now use had landmark pictures taken on day one and had actually had biopsies taken from their skin so they can generate some of those RNA expressions that he was talking about. And they had 3 a year for that 9-year period. And then after 9 years, they looked at the before and after pictures taken on day one and after 9 years, and then sent those pictures out to 500 KOLs in our industry, all plastic surgeons and dermatologists, and asked them all to guess their median age.
Wow.
And what they found was 100% of them were guessed wrong, and they were actually looking younger, obviously, from what they see in the pictures.
That was amazing. I mean, even just seeing the sunspots, freckles, everything, was just almost disappeared. One question we had earlier was, now this is just reversing the look of your skin, but does it help it? Is it beneficial medically at all?
Absolutely, absolutely. So you're creating healthier tissue. We're doing some studies now where you're potentially getting rid of future cancerous growths that can happen from a lot of that pigmented melanin that gets stuck together. But absolutely, it does address from a medical standpoint healthier skin, which then just, when your skin's healthier, it looks more vibrant, you reflect more light, and has less issues.
Oh my gosh, totally. One question we have from a student is, do you need a medical degree to perform this service?
So that would depend on which state you live in.
Mm-hmm.
Illinois and Wisconsin is a little bit of like the Wild West in the laser industry.
Mm-hmm.
You would need to be trained and certified on the device that you have. But in Illinois and Wisconsin, you do not have to have any specific medical degree to operate, BBL or really any laser. Other states are more stringent. Some of them you have to be an MD, I should say. Some of them have to be a nurse practitioner, but Illinois, Wisconsin, most of the Midwestern states, anybody can perform.
It's a little incredible that we're able to do that. But
with that said, it takes some expertise and some learning and to know how to do it. But absolutely, anybody can do it.
Awesome. One other question we have is, what is the cost for treatments? We were saying that they did up to 3. So for, I would say, either a Medi-Spa environment that might have a Sciton machine, what is the average, cost of this service that people are
sure
investing in?
Cost will vary depending on where you're located. If you're in bigger cities as opposed to rural areas, or costs will also vary depending upon body parts that you're treating. If you're treating hands, it's going to be less than if you're treating, a face. Majority of our business is on the face, and what you're going to see is normally packages of 3 being sold for anywhere probably from $900 to $1,400 for the package of 3. So $300 to $500 per treatment.
Wow.
On the face.
Okay, that's great.
In the laser space, treatment prices can get up to several $1,000s for treatments, depending on what you're doing.
Right.
Yep.
That's great. So what other, we watched that video. Are there any other machines or any other laser treatments that Sciton does?
So Sciton has several different types of lasers, BBL being one of them. We also have a laser called Halo. You might have seen or heard of Halo in the past. Halo is a more aggressive treatment where you're actually combining 2 different laser wavelengths at the same time that fire on your skin in a way that we call fractionated. And fractionated basically is kind of like aerating your lawn, where you're not treating every piece of skin. You're leaving some pockets of untreated skin. But Halo is a more aggressive treatment, which will then also get rid of fine lines and wrinkles and pores, more of a texture thing, where BBL is more geared towards color. We also make lasers that treat surgical scars. We make lasers that will do resurfacing, where plastic surgeons will use them in combination of doing surgeries. Maybe help them to tighten around eyes if they're doing blepharoplasty. oil laser called Diva that's used for female vaginal health. We make laser lipolysis lasers, endovenous ablation lasers, and then vascular lasers that get rid of spider bangs.
Oh, wonderful. So with all the equipment, I think there's a lot, the people that are watching this video, a lot of them are students that are estheticians or cosmetologists that are looking or interested in maybe in the state of Wisconsin performing these types of treatments. A lot of them are curious about the level of training and what that entails. Can you give us a little information on how Sciton conducts training?
Sure. There's a lot of different ways you can get trained in the laser industry. Really, some of the best ones are the ones that are put on by the manufacturers themselves. That are specific to their equipment.
Mm-hmm.
So when a client buys our device, we train with an in-house team of nurses that train on site, and it goes through a pretty in-depth didactic course in safety, laser physics, laser tissue interaction, and then we dive into doing hands-on training with every type of issue that you want to sell, whether it's skin rejuvenation or vascularity or what have you. And then from there, we run a lot of online learning capabilities, a lot of archived webinars. We do return trainings. Our reps in the field do a lot of training. This is probably a lot like, you guys could liken it to cutting hair, where from day one you can cut hair, but 5 years later you're just way better at it. It's no different in the laser business as well.
Okay, that's cool. How long are most trainings? Are they, a couple weeks? Are they, a matter of hours? Hopefully a little bit more than 2 hours.
Usually about 2 days. You're doing
Okay.
some homework ahead of time, watching webinars, and diving into some online assets to get you going. And then our team is on site for 2 days. Typically, our reps will come back in about 3 weeks later and help kind of drive that race car a little faster.
All right. So, Pat, is there contraindications why someone wouldn't get like a BBL treatment or have a laser treatment?
Absolutely. Good question. So contraindications in the laser world are pretty consistent. That would be you cannot be on any photosensitive drugs. Those usually involve acne meds, antibiotics, things like that. If you're prone to cold sores or herpes, you shouldn't have a laser treatment. People who are prone to seizures induced by light shouldn't have a laser treatment. Pacemakers are a no-no. Pregnancy, there's studies are that nothing will happen, but it's pretty common in our industry to not treat a pregnant lady.
Mm-hmm.
And then certain lasers are, we've got a scale of skin types called the Fitzpatrick scale. I'm not sure if you guys have all learned about that yet.
Yeah.
It's basically a number 1 through 6, 6 being the darkest of skin. A lot of lasers might only be able to treat skin types 1, 2, or 3. And then, skin types 4, 5, and 6 would be a contraindication. BBL, you can treat all skin types though. So in a nutshell, those are your kind of contraindications.
That's so great. I mean, I think that's one thing with diversity and making sure that, what treatments can and really help all skin types. I love that BBL is one of those. With, one thing is that this is a big investment, obviously. And I think it is important to understand that investment for, our salon owners or even our, students who think about, equipment and how much it costs. What is the upkeep and what does that financial investment look like?
So that financial investment really kind of depends upon, what you're buying and how many different modalities, let's say, that laser has. We're in the BBL is in the IPL space, which stands for intense pulse light. There are many, many, many manufacturers of IPLs. A lot like, let's say, the iPhone series, you can still buy an IPL that would be like an iPhone 1, and that one might be, $20,000, and the iPhone 10 is $100,000. So really, I mean, in the laser world, you're looking at tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars for lasers. They're always financed. You're usually looking at, a breakdown. If you look at return on investment of equipment, you always look at, how many treatments do I have to do to make that monthly laser payment? And once you break it down to that point, it's usually pretty minimal. If you do, 5 or 8 treatments in a month, you're literally making a laser payment, which normally our clients are doing that many in a day.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important. I think sometimes our, students and guests, understanding why that price might be higher than other, services, an esthetician or a med spa might offer. I think it's always important to understand that.
Yeah, there's a big investment from on the front side, and you're competing in the laser. If you're doing laser treatments, you're competing against people down the street that are also doing that. So, on the flip side of that, if you have inferior equipment, getting inferior results or unsafe results, more often than not, you're going to lose to the guy with better equipment. So
totally,
there's a lot that goes into the purchasing of it.
Well, Pat, I have a couple more questions here. There's some really good ones here.
Yeah, no problem. I've got a few more minutes. No problem at all.
Wonderful. Okay, so one of the questions that we have is, are there any risks? Is there a risk to doing this? Or I know we said contraindications, but what if I'm just nervous? Maybe I don't have a contraindication, but is there a risk to doing lasers at all? Is it painful? What does it feel like? Is there downtime?
Sure. Excellent. Good question. Again, it would depend upon the type of laser and the type of treatment that you are doing. So let's look at BBL. BBL itself has a lot of built-in safety components in the machine and in the software that keep the practitioner from getting into any kind of trouble during the treatment. And what is that trouble? That trouble really can result in a burn on the skin. So if you're treating at the wrong parameters or the wrong power level, or maybe have an inferior device, that would be your worst case scenario. You could create a burn in the skin. BBL, what does it feel like? It feels kind of a hot flash on the skin. Some people liken it to a very small rubber band snap. The treatment itself takes about 15 to 20 minutes on the face. And when you get up from the treatment, you might be a little red. Some people might be a tad puffy if you have histamine reaction issues. You really no downtime. You can go right back in makeup. You can go right back into your regular skin protocol, except for retinols. You really need to stay off those for about a week.
Okay.
And then as laser treatments get more aggressive, let's say like our halo treatment, it's potential you could get swollen for a day. Those are a little bit more uncomfortable, or maybe for 12 hours post, you're not feeling so great in that area. It feels like a really nasty sunburn or something like that. But most of that dissipates pretty quickly. But with BBL, really no downtime, and not an overly uncomfortable treatment.
Oh, that's good. So I think what I heard was, depending on, the intensity of the laser and how it's being used and who is being used, you really don't have a ton of downtime unless you start to get into like the Halo series. Okay.
Unless you get into Halo, or you're doing some plastic surgery kind of thing where you're actually removing some tissue.
Exactly. Is there any additional aftercare? I mean, you said you could put makeup on after, what did you say, a couple hours? Is that correct?
So yeah, this would depend on the modality.
Okay.
With BBL, you can be back into makeup as soon as your skin feels just calmed down. It might be an hour or two.
Okay.
As far as aftercare goes, your skincare regimen is pretty important. And I would stick to medical grade skincare that was recommended by the esthetician. There's a lot of good stuff out there. So the combination of the two are very important. Not only just the laser treatment, but then the maintenance part. Number one thing you can do is moisturize and sunscreen.
Right. Use that SPF. I think it's the one thing that people forget the most of.
Number one thing that can keep you from looking old.
Okay.
If you did nothing else,
A little SPF, right?
if you only did one thing, it'd be SPF.
Okay, another question we have is, and you kind of hinted on this a little bit, but I just want to dive a little bit deeper on it, is, we said a little bit that for a noticeable difference, you said about 3 treatments, right? But then the one thing I was saying is that depending on skin and what you're trying to achieve with, like, let's say BBL, how different can one person's regimen or treatment schedule be versus another person? Is it 3 tries and everyone has the same results? Or is it, someone might need to go 4 or 5?
Okay, another great question. So, this has to do with, managing expectations versus results versus kind of what you're seeing on the person's skin. As you can imagine, everybody's skin is different.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's skin probably reacts differently to, light-based devices interacting with their skin. So when we say, we recommend 3 treatments, that's because that's the average across the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
Someone might be super happy after 1 treatment. Someone might say, you know what, I need another one. I want to take this to the next level. So a lot of it is your own personal expectations and what you're trying to accomplish. So, for instance, one of the photos that Dr. Bitter showed on that video was of a lighter skinned gal that had a face full of what we'll call freckles, Lantingines, and then the after picture that was basically all clean.
Mm.
So if that were a 3-treatment process on that picture, the first pre-treatment probably got rid of 60 or 70% of all of those spots on her face. Some people may say, you know what, I'm really happy with this. I look great. But then to get the rest of it might take a couple more treatments. So it's really kind of a matter of everybody's different and what are your expectations.
Totally. Okay, that makes sense. So a couple of the other questions, and I think this is because, and this might be referring to like halo and maybe more the aggressive type of treatments, is there scabbing, or should we experience any sloughing or of any, the skin?
So BBL, what happens is, and again, we're talking about browns here, so getting rid of those Lantingines, those freckles. What will happen in that process? So the light is attracted to that color.
Mm-hmm.
It absorbs those Lantingines absorb the color. They actually turn darker and look worse.
Mm-hmm.
And then that is going to navigate itself either outward out of your skin or your lymphatic system breaks it up and washes it away. So there will be a period of time, going back to that picture on Dr. Bitter's video there, that gal after that first treatment for probably a week, it probably looked like she had coffee grounds on her face.
Mm.
And those can be covered up with makeup. Maybe a little bit of a texture if you touched it. No swelling, but yeah, that's going to slough off more often probably in the shower or on your pillow. More aggressive treatments like halo, they're not necessarily scabs. We call them MENS, which is an acronym for microscopic epidermal necrotic debris. And that's similar. The target of what you're trying to get rid of is trying to migrate itself either inward or outward. It's going to present itself visually for sure, but not scabs. You're not going to be bleeding, so there's no blood drawn, so no scab.
Great. No, I think that's realistic. That is a realistic expectation that your skin is going through a transformative process. So that's great. So one other question I have is, for someone that is newer to the Medi-Spa world, when we're looking at, opportunities to gain an understanding, is there training only through the salon, or could we go to Sciton, independently? Or what would you recommend?
for someone that doesn't have a job yet?
No, for someone that
Okay.
is looking to gain more experience.
Sure. There's tons of opportunities online, if you look at the manufacturers of a lot of the light-based devices, they're all going to have their own YouTube channel, their own Vimeo channel, but also a ton of assets on their website. So, Sciton, for instance, if you went to Sciton.com, we're going to have an archived webinar series where you can, dive in for 45 minutes and look at something specific. For instance, like Dr. Bitter talking about how he uses BBL to get rid of acne. We've got webinars based on, doing resurfacing on the face. We've got vascular webinars. So there's a lot of learning opportunities available to you if you just kind of dig in online. There are independent companies out there that do laser training that won't train specifically on a specific device, but do it at a more broad-based capability.
Of course.
So there are quite a few opportunities out there, and Sciton has quite a few as well.
Wonderful. I'm just going to go through this list, make sure that we've hit all of the questions. One last one is just more about machine maintenance. Is there, when we take an investment in laser machines, what kind of maintenance is involved in ensuring that your machine is in, the best condition, sanitation, things like that?
Sure. That's going to, again, probably be specific from, different from manufacturer to manufacturer. Our machine is maintenance free as far as, calibrating and making sure it's working properly on a day-to-day basis. We have modems built into our machine that spit out data to us that will allow us to know whether there's a potential issue coming down the pipeline in the future, whether it's a flash lamp, which is like a light bulb that's wearing out. We can get on those kind of things before they become an issue. The practitioner's job with our machine is to keep it clean,
Right.
Keep it sterilized, get it wiped down with alcohol. No other maintenance on our device is really necessary. Keep it clean, keep it dust free. Maybe once a year you need to add some distilled water, which is used in the cooling system. But our machine is fairly maintenance free.
Well, that kind of goes into a second question I have. There are specifics usually for the kinds of rooms that these treatments are in. Could you talk a little bit more of what does that actual service room look like?
So, a lot of times these service rooms are used for multiple things within the spa. It could be, the esthetician's regular room that they're also doing facials in. A lot of times the devices will require specific types of power. So, our device requires 220 volt power, which is, more powerful than your average wall outlet. Enough power that's going to be used for dryers in your house. You're not supposed to have any exterior windows that are not covered up. So you have to have blinds and exterior windows, no mirrors in the room. If you're doing a lot of, let's say, hair removal, you might want to have a decent little ventilation system. Other than that, it's no different than any other med spa other than taking some precautions for safety, like a mirror and window thing.
Yeah, totally. I think that that's something people don't think about is even just the space itself to have the service. One last question that came in is, are there any preparations that a guest should be doing before their treatment?
Sure. The cleaner the skin is, the better shape that the skin is prior to laser treatment, the better result you're going to have. Making sure that you're exfoliated, making sure that you've done a good job taking care of your skin. A lot of times, if you can calm down the melanocytes in your skin via using, retinol, hydroquinone mixture for a period of time ahead of time, that'll give you a better result. No sun damage prior to a treatment, so you can't come back from Mexico and get a laser treatment right away. And then saying post-treatment, you're going to be hypersensitive to the sun post-treatment for a couple of weeks. Sunburns. Other than that, coming in with clean, healthy, as healthy
Oh, that's great. That's really great. All right. Well, Patrick, I just want to thank you so much for being so nimble and flexible, especially with
No worries.
the internet being out. I thank you, everyone that joined us today, and for your questions. They were awesome. I appreciate your time. We're looking forward to continuing our series, and you'll see you again at 2 o'clock for our hair series and 3 o'clock for our spa series. So enjoy the rest of your night. And once again, thank you, Patrick, for your time.
You're welcome. Have a great night.